In today's video, we have the latest trade rumors from around the league. Today, we're taking a look at the latest trade talk around Horvat in Vancouver. The Ottawa Senators looking for a defenseman. Could Vladimir Tarasenko be on his way to Carolina as well as a familiar face in Montreal, Joel Edmundson? Plus, we have NHL news from the waiver wire. We also have an update and things we want to talk about regarding Matt Dumba in Minnesota. And of course, the coaching change today in Vancouver. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. We have a lot to cover today. It's been a pretty eventful news day, so let's dive right in and get started. First up, we have news from the NHL waiver wire. Yesterday, the New York Rangers placed forward Johnny Brzezinski on waivers. He has since cleared, so nobody picked him up, and he's now been reassigned to their AHL affiliate. We have two more players on waivers here today. We have Anton Bleed with the Colorado Avalanche. He's appeared in 13 games so far this year in the NHL for Colorado and put up 0 points. He hasn't even, to me, in my opinion, played the greatest at the American Hockey League level. The stats down there are not overly favorable. I know he went to Colorado hoping for more of an opportunity. Not really working out for him because, to be honest, it doesn't seem like he's really earning it. Dryden Hunt in Toronto is now on waivers. Of course, the Leafs picked him up a while back. He's appeared in 9 games with them. He came on waivers from the Avalanche, so the Avalanche will have first dibs to reclaim him. So we'll see. He started the year with the New York Rangers. He was part of their organization last year where he was a fairly regular in the lineup, playing, I think it was 75 or 76 games. He got picked up by the Avalanche this year, played, I think it was around 24, 25 games. Now he spent the last little while with the Leafs, 9 games, 1 goal, no assists for 1 point. So the Leafs have kind of seen enough, so to speak. They have enough other options that they decided to put him back on waivers. He could be reassigned to their Toronto Marlies affiliate team in the American Hockey League. Or like I said, he could get picked up by another club, including the Avalanche having, I believe, first dibs because of the timing here. So we'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the big news today, which we did talk about in our video earlier. If you missed it, I'll link it in the YouTube cards. But Bruce Boudreau has finally been relieved of his duties in Vancouver. I felt terrible for this man who's got a lifelong history of being in the NHL. Yes, I understand the Canucks have not had great results. It's a results-oriented business, and we knew a change was coming. But what I felt bad for Bruce Boudreau is all the shots that Jim Rutherford would take at him in the media. And then on top of that, we've known, it's been leaked for like a couple of weeks now, that he was going to be out and Rick Tocchet was going to be taking over. It was the worst kept secret in hockey, but yet they kept trotting him out to coach this team. And I think they wanted to get him through a tougher part of the schedule. So when a new coaching staff took over, they'd have a little bit of an easier time with teams that might be more winnable games for where this team is at, that allow them to have a better start. And, you know, that's not entirely fair, I don't think, but I guess they've handled it that way. And like I said, I think Jim Rutherford kind of realizes now maybe that he didn't go about things the best way, because in the press conference today introducing Rick Tocchet, he did make mention of the fact that he needs to zip it, is what he said, moving forward. That he's been, you know, his history shows that he's been very blunt and honest when he talks to the media, when he's asked questions. And he can see now that obviously some of his answers might have been difficult for Bruce to hear and deal with. So obviously, like I said, I don't think that his feelings were completely unjustified. You understand that Bruce was hired before Rutherford was. So when you come in and there's no GM in place, and you know that the next GM is going to want their own guy, it's rare that it works out that he gets to stay. I mean, Bruce would have been through that before with other teams. We've seen him be on a team with a GM change. And it's typically, you know, they want their own guy. And of course, we have like a Pittsburgh theme going on now in Vancouver with a bunch of former Penguins leading the way, from Rutherford to Alvin to Tocchet now being the head coach, Sergei Gonchar being on the coaching staff, of course, former Penguin player and coach as well. Adam Foote comes in as part of that new coaching staff as well, a long time NHL defenseman, very successful. Not a Penguin connection there, but every other way there was. I know some wondered about Mike Yeo in Vancouver as an assistant coach, if he might be Bruce's guy, so to speak. Some thought maybe he was, but clearly he wasn't, because he is still there where some of the other members of the staff were let go with Bruce. So certainly he's the only kind of bench staff that remains with the club, and then you get Foote and Gonchar coming on with Tocchet. Lots of experience between them as players. Obviously lots of championships as well. Doesn't mean they're all going to make great coaches. Like I said before, when it comes to Rick Tocchet, he had a great playing career. Well-respected assistant coach As a head coach, he hasn't really done much of anything. His record is not great, so I'm not really sure why they're convinced he's the guy. Clearly, they know and trust him and think he is, so time will tell. We'll give him a chance. But Bruce Boudreau had the 4th highest winning percentage of all Canucks coaches in the history of the franchise, with almost 55% winning percentage, which is pretty good over the course of just over 100 games that he was there to coach. Like, he had a good run. I understand, they're not in a position in the standings where they want this year, but I think Rutherford and Alvey need to look at the fact that the player personnel is not where it needs to be either. They don't have a blue line. They haven't had an all-star goaltender in Thatcher Demko this year. JT Miller is not the same player as he was last year. That's not Bruce's fault. I mean, you can say what you want about team systems and structure and all that. And obviously, there was a conflict between the two, but I really don't know that Bruce is really all to blame. But that's how it goes in hockey. It's results-oriented. It's easier to change a coach than make a whole bunch of trades. I know there's going to be some trades coming, and we'll see where it goes. I hope for Bruce's sake that he gets another opportunity somewhere, because I do think that he is a good coach and would be the right fit with another organization. I know there's going to probably be some teams that, look to him. I wonder if he'll probably take the rest of the year off, but, I think he might need some time to heal after everything he's been through in Vancouver, but we'll see what happens in his future. Matt Dumba was scratched for a 2nd straight game with the Minnesota Wild, leading to fueling more speculation about a potential trade. The first time it happened, there was obviously talk from the coach that, they were unhappy with his play and that Dumba knew what he had to do, and they talked about it and all that, but then it continues to be, more games here, so leading more people to talk, well, maybe there's more to it. Maybe they are working on finalizing a trade, and they want to protect their asset and make sure he doesn't get hurt before the trade's completed and all agreed upon. I don't know if that's going to be true or not. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the Minnesota Defenders' time in the organization is definitely coming to a close this year. Whether or not he is moved or not, I think the Wild pretty much need to move him to make any other upgrades to the team from a cap perspective. I know long-term they can't keep him because there's just no way from a cap perspective that they can afford to do that. At the same time, I think his next contract is going to be far less money than what he's earning right now, because his play doesn't justify that kind of a cap hit in dollars anymore. So we'll have to see where that goes. But certainly, more talk about a potential trade. Hard to say where the suitors could be. I know there's been a link to a few other teams, but we haven't really seen a good pattern of team scouting and everything like that to really link him to any specific places just yet. But it makes you wonder if they're working hard behind the scenes on something where he hasn't been in the lineup for multiple games now. Kevin Weeks, an NHL insider as well, is reporting that he feels that Tarasenko in St. Louis is an excellent fit to go to Carolina now that Max Pacioretty's done for the year and they have more room from a LTIR perspective. Obviously, it would not be shocking or surprising in the least for Carolina to add a scoring forward to replace Pacioretty. The only thing that makes me skeptical on Tarasenko is that Carolina has a history of not doing rentals. They typically don't like to spend a bunch of assets for rental players. I mean, if you look at Don Waddell and the history there, and since he's been leading that team under new ownership for the last number of years, that's what they don't tend to do those things, at least very little. So not to say that they couldn't maybe work out an extension for Tarasenko. That's always possible. I really don't know from Tarasenko's perspective if he wants to do that. He does have some trade protection in his contract, though. So clearly he'd have to agree to go there. And if he agrees to that, maybe he's willing to sign a couple years extension or something to that effect. Don't really know. But at the end of the day, he makes a lot of sense just on what they need. But at the same time, I could see Carolina maybe adding a center. I wouldn't be shocked if they get into the Horvat sweepstakes, which we'll talk about here shortly as well. But, obviously he's a comparable player to Pacioretty. So from that perspective, makes sense. I just don't know where they don't typically do rentals. But there's also links to the Hurricanes maybe adding on the blue line as well. And there's some talk that an old friend of theirs that plays for Montreal, Joel Edmundson, who spent a year in Carolina before being traded to the Habs, might be a player that they have their eye on. Obviously, he's got size, left shot defenseman. Certainly has a good amount of playoff experience under his belt, winning a cup in St. Louis. Had the finals run with Montreal a couple of years ago. He's certainly, a pretty solid veteran. And in the right role, as a depth role, third pair, especially, I think he could be a very effective guy. We know that there's been a lot of talk in Montreal about a potential trade of Edmundson. We also know that the team is, but based on what Montreal has said publicly, It doesn't sound like they really want to move him, but I think Ken Hughes is the type of GM that will listen to anything and everything. And if he feels it makes sense for the team, gives them flexibility, and helps them get better in the future, I think they will do it. So it really boils down to an offer. But we know the Carolina Hurricanes, like I said about Tarasenko, he comes with a little bit of term, so it makes sense that he would be a fit there. They're obviously familiar with him as well. They had the same coach when he was there, same manager, so there's lots of familiarity in that sense. And at the same time, I really think they wouldn't be looking to maybe add a player up front and on the blue line. That would not be shocking if the Canes do that. So we'll have to wait and see, but certainly a couple interesting names to watch on the NHL trade front. Fourthperiod.com and Dave Pagnotta is now linking New Jersey as being another team to watch in the Timo Meier sweepstakes. We've talked about the Rangers. There's been talk about the Leafs. The Devils are certainly in the mix. Of course, Swiss-born Meier has Swiss-born captain there, Nico Hischier. I'm sure they have played together. I know they both played for the Halifax Mooseheads during their junior career before being drafted, but those did not happen. They didn't overlap, so they didn't play in Halifax together at the same time. But they have played at other international tournaments for Switzerland in the past as well. So I know the two are familiar with each other, but being a couple years apart, probably haven't played together a whole lot. Not that that means anything much, but certainly for some players, I find especially European players, it's nice for them to have fellow countrymen on the team as well. But not to say that that's the only reason by any means. It's certainly not. But obviously New Jersey really been rumored to want to add another top six forward. Timo Meier certainly fits the bill. 30, 40 goal man. He's young. He's an RFA. He could fit with that group going forward. The other thing about this trade that makes a ton of sense is the Devils have a lot of young assets and draft currency that they could use as trade bait. Wouldn't be shocking to see them use one of their young forwards like an Alexander Holtz, or they do have a plethora of defensemen as well in the pipeline. Maybe one of them get offered up. Maybe there's a combination of picks and prospects there that makes sense for San Jose to shop Meier. We know that they've reportedly are going to be allowing Meier's agent to speak to teams about potential contract extensions. So it wouldn't be shocking at all to see New Jersey in the mix. I think it's far from a sure thing by any means, but again, it makes a lot of sense for them to be in the mix there. The latest on Bo Horvat, there's been a lot of teams linked to this guy, and I don't know, there's going to be some people that comment and be like, oh, you got Horvat going to all these different teams. You don't know what you're talking about. I get that quite a bit. You got to understand, some of these players when they're made available and they know they're going to be dealt, if they're a good player, and they might make sense for half or more of the league. So Horvat's a player that I would think every playoff team is going to look into. If not, even some of the non-playoff teams to see if they can make something work to help them get better for next year and beyond. Because this guy is going to be looking for a big extension. And obviously lots of other teams have been in the mix, or rumored at least to be inquiring. Doesn't mean that they're going to be the favorite or front runner to land them. But another team that has been linked by Canucks media, Satir Shah, is talking about the LA Kings as a team to watch in his opinion. That LA wants to make sure they get into the playoffs and try to make some noise in the playoffs. Now, the Kings would probably view Horvat as more of a rental player. I don't think long-term he fits there, given that they have Kopitar and Deneau and a few young centers that are up and coming, including Quinton Byfield, Velarde. They still have Alex Turcotte in their system and others. I don't know long-term that he really makes sense there, but as a rental he would, and would be able to add a lot of extra goal-scoring ability. So, to me, the LA Kings do make some sense. But I would think that they're going to have a lot of competition, obviously. The LA Kings also do have a lot of young, interesting prospects that they're going to have to move because they can't all be playing in LA. There's just not enough room. They have, like I said, a lot of picks that they accumulated as they started to tear the team down a number of years ago, and as they built back up, they have a lot of these guys now that are still fighting for jobs that just don't have room. So they have the players that would be interesting to Vancouver, I have no doubt. But like we talked about yesterday, if Shane Wright was offered up by Seattle, I don't know if any other team is going to be able to beat that. We don't know, though, that Seattle would do that. That was just speculation from ESPN that maybe they should consider that, right? And I don't know that they would. Seattle is reportedly in the mix, though, for Horvat, like many other teams. But we'll see. Now, the LA Kings also are looking to upgrade on the left side of their blue line. They are linked to trading a right-shot defenseman and looking for a left-shot defenseman. It may not necessarily be the same deal where we see a one-for-one, but the Senators have been linked to them and their right-shot defense. Pierre Dorion, who took in the game the other night in LA is now at their next game as well. So it's 2 consecutive LA Kings games that Dorian is at. So he's following the team. He's watching them in person multiple times now. Between Matt Roy and Sean Walker especially, it makes the most sense based on who the LA Kings would like to move. I know I've seen some speculation amongst the fan bases about Sean Durzi. I don't see that happening. I would think of all the right shot D, he's probably the one that's not really on the radar to move. They'd want to move one of the guys that are a little bit older, and leave these young guys in the mix. Like Brant Clark, I don't see being made available. I don't see Durzi being made available. It's likely going to be Roy or Walker, which, from a veteran standpoint and a cheaper contract standpoint, might fit with what Dorian wants to do in Ottawa. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm not really convinced that they should make an upgrade. This team doesn't look like they're heading for the playoffs. As soon as you get excited thinking that they're going to go on a run and get themselves in, then they have a couple of disappointing games. So to me, I would probably ride this year out with the young guys and see what you get for the future and deal with this in the offseason. It should have been dealt with last offseason as they dealt with all those other things, getting DeBrincat and signing Giroux and locking up Norris and Stützle and all those guys. They need to address the blue line too, and just it hasn't happened. I understand the need, but Dorian is in a weird situation. This team's going to be changing ownership in the next couple of months, and you got to wonder if he's a lame duck GM. The new owner's going to want to put their own people in place. He's been there quite a while. I believe it's like 7 years now, and the team does not have a good record. Yes, they started a rebuild not long after that. The first couple of years he was GM, they were more in competitive mode. Then about the last 4 to 5 years, they've been going through this rebuild, and it's at a stage where it's ready for the next phase, but you don't know how new ownership is really going to feel about that. I don't know if they would want to go with a clean slate right off the bat. Are they going to give guys like Dorian and Smith time to see if they can get it together before they make a change? We don't know. So really, there's some questioning whether Dorian really should be doing much or be allowed to do much, but if the current structure is not preventing him from doing that, he's going to do what he's got to do to try to save his job. And at the end of the day, that team needs help, and he's going to try to find it. I just hope he doesn't do anything crazy as a case to save jobs, because a lot of fan base think that the Sens need a new coach. I like DJ Smith. I think there's lots of good that he's done and that there is to like. Very likable person. I just don't know. I'm not entirely convinced he's the coach moving forward. I think they might need a new voice in there to take it to the next level. Pierre's done a good job, but like any GM, there's questionable moves as well. I'm not 100% sure he's the guy going forward either. It's just certainly debatable after everything the fan base and the team has been through in the last 4 or 5 years. Wouldn't be shocked to see them clean house. So I'm not sure he should be doing too much, but he's certainly looking closely at some Kings right shot defensemen. We'll see if they pull the trigger and make a move. Let me know your thoughts on that and everything else discussed down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe. Stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.